Let me introduce Mr. Sunil Raghavan. Dr. Sunil Raghavan is a development banker turned business strategist, professional researcher, academician, and senior development consultant. He is a development economist by qualification. He holds PhD from IIT Mumbai. Trained corporate business planner. He has 35 years of pan-India professional experience in researching, project execution, consulting, and advisory in multiple sectors of development. His core competencies are social enterprise business, development initiatives, livelihood analysis, and planning, monitoring and evaluation, creation of targeted comprehensive implementable climate smart development plans, including addressing funding and sustainable issues, development banking, business process, re-engineering, people-centric financial sector innovations, skilling, employability, and experience in designing, partnering, executing, and evaluating social sector programs and social enterprises, ensuring environmental and social sustainability. He has worked as a professor with Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai and worked with NABARD for 22 years and Future Group and NABQuants. Let us welcome Dr. Sunil Raghavan.
Honorable Member of Parliament Shri N.K. Premachandran, Dr. Suresh Kumar, and the eminent panelists. So today I will try to explain certain emerging challenges in the education sector as it unfolds now. As we all know, COVID has made deeper and extensive disruptions in our social life. And we now realize, as we come out of the lockdown, we realize that life is not as it used to be a couple of months ago. So the fact is that, as the Honorable MB had already stated, we have to cohabit with COVID now. There is no solution and there is no end to it. And there is nothing called a post-COVID scenario either. So we have to live with it, accept it as a reality, and then adjust ourselves and reinvent our strategies there. And two important characteristics of this kind of a pandemic situation is trust deficit and anxieties. Societies, human societies behavior everywhere, you will experience trust deficit. The employee will lose the trust on the employer, and that way it goes everywhere. And anxieties also, it is an all-pervading anxiety syndrome actually. This is what is happening with the government, with the planners, students, teachers, parents, everywhere. Now, when we come to education, as we know, education has three levels: elementary, secondary, and higher education. And there are mainly two types of service providers, private and public. Public is the major. 1.4 million schools and more than 260 million young learners, India has the largest school system in the world. And out of this, 25% schools are owned by, these are our approximations, 25% of schools are owned by private players. Likewise, with about 1,000 universities and 52,000 higher education institutions and around 37.5 million students, we rank third in higher education sector. And above us, US and then China. These are two other countries ahead of us. If you just visualize education in an input-output context, Manjit, you can run the slides.
Sure, sir, right away.
Yeah, please. We'll come to the second slide then. So if when we visualize this whole process in an input-output perspective, we know that human beings are the main inputs and they are the outputs. So the in between certain value additions happen, and that is education. And education happens to be the prime supplier of one of the most important resources for all the sectors. This is where we will place education. Now, in the wake of Right to Education Act and certain so many policy guidelines, and yeah, it has come now, so that we will be faster. That's why. You can move to the second one, third one now. Right. Good enough. So, in the wake of Right to Education Act and the several policy guidelines and instructions issued by state governments and Government of India, we have been focusing mainly on the input side. This is a thing which has been studied in depth actually, and this has caused some problems or some issues with the quality of output, or what we call as the outcome, educational outcomes and quality of educations and people coming out of these institutions. It has wider implications, of course, and we have been mostly concentrating in our endeavor to increase or comply with the Right to Education Act. We have been focusing mainly on enrollments, retention of children at school, and then encouraging them to stay in school. So they have to be retained there. For that, so many strategies like noon meal schemes and other things were introduced. That's the way. And then the infrastructures also were created, additional infrastructures were created, new amenities and facilities were created in schools. And these were some of the things which happened. We will move to the next slide. Now, when we move out of the lockdowns, we are slowly moving out of the lockdown, and when we think of restarting education, certain challenges we need to now take on. Some of the major challenges we'll discuss in the following slides. So now we have closed schools, but education cannot wait. Education has to continue. So there are so many other options for us, so many delivery channels like distance learning, e-learning strategies, so many things. Now, there are some hands-on experiences of jump-starting this kind of an education process in an unprepared society also, that I will discuss later. So in a situation where the schools or the educational institutions remain closed, and and we have to continue with education, then certainly technology will be the key driver there. And this will, and we'll be switching on to different modes like online, distance learning, or e-learning, or offline, whatever it is. So it will be a kind of a digital format we'll be moving on. There are several challenges to be addressed on this kind of a situation, and it has to be resolved in a time bound manner. Like, we have to build on technology readiness and capability of the stakeholders. The main stakeholders, as you know, are the students, the teachers, and the parents. And are they ready enough to adapt to a new teaching learning method strategy? This is one thing. Second is the readiness of the content. Content is the curriculum. The readiness of the content, then pedagogical methods, the way these are delivered and the tools used for delivering these things, and the monitoring and evaluation systems for assessing children. Are they ready? This is another thing we have to take care of. Then all these things would need additional resources, additional funds to ready the schools, ready the curriculum, and to ready the course delivery systems in tune with the requirements of online teaching and learning processes. Now, eh, all these things will also have a major impact on the minds of people. So we need to address the anxieties of the stakeholders, teachers, learners, and parents. They're all really stressed. Everybody knows it. And we need to create strategies to engage them continuously to ensure quality learning. So we'll move on to the next slide. When we talk about the digital platforms for delivering education, the first thing we have to address is the digital divide and its implications. Because the challenge is in ensuring equity, inclusiveness of education, and its continued engagement of the stakeholders. So there is a heavy risk. Actually, honorable member had indicated this. There will be a new class of tech haves and have-nots. This risk is there. This is lurking there, and we have to address this issue in a war footing. Then remote and online learning will aggravate the nutrition needs and mental stress of people, students, because Otherwise, they were getting this noon meal and all in school. Now, when they start learning from home, we have to devise other strategies to ensure that they are receiving this support. And mental stress means there is no change of environment. Students are sitting at home in the same way, in the same place, in the same environment, and learning becomes a quite boring activity for them. Initial period, of course, there is some amount of excitement on their side, and I feel that probably for 1 or 2 months these children, because we are mainly focusing on the school education, these children will lose their enthusiasm or anxiety or excitement to learn these things from these kind of gadgets, and this will result in increased dropout rates, and there could be decline in demand for higher education as we move on. This is it. And social and emotional development children will also be affected because of the stressful conditions they experience. Because as we know, schools provide a convergence point for students from different backgrounds, and it is the place where they talk, laugh, and play around, and this enables them to uh, acquire leadership capabilities, communication skills, all these things. Assessment challenges, that remains. How are we going to uh, design the assessment tools, because it has to be fair enough and it has to be transparent, and the students are sitting elsewhere. So these things are there. Then we need to design innovative blended educational models online, because there could be more collaborations because funds are not there. So you have to look out for more funding sources. You have to look out for more technology providers. All these things will come there. So teaching, learning, everything is going to change in this environment. We'll move on to the next slide. New normal and future education ecosystem will have then more virtual campuses and online academies for higher education. If we see, and higher education basically will become, this is my feeling, higher education will become more accessible because the boundary lines will fade away. Even from Harvard University, you can attend a child sitting in Aurangabad, a student sitting in Aurangabad can attend a Harvard University MBA program because technology provides that facility now. And education, higher education might become expensive and or more affordable, let me put, and more and more people can go for that. But there could be a reduced demand initially because people might drop off from the schooling stage because they may find it difficult to cope with this changed learning environment. Then schools will remain as they form the base. Schools will have to be there, but there is need for decentralized and contextualized course delivery. What some state governments have done now, like Kerala, they started off immediately. They had an anxiety jerk there. They simply started off with telecasting these things, these courses or classes over TVs, and students were asked to watch TV and attend the classes. So, and the eventuality is that around three students have already committed suicide because their parents could not afford to have a TV at home. This is a situation now. So we have to see the readiness, we have to put in place certain things before we move on to these things, but it is imminent, indispensable. Classroom discussions and laughters cannot be easily done away with, so we may have to, at least to begin with, we can have this kind of online learning facilities and all those things, but at the same time schools and other educational institutions have to be reopened, but that will be operating in a different format because that will be in a staggered manner. Probably the schools will have to increase their capacities because they have to comply with the social distancing norms and all. That would make school education more expensive also. Ajit, next slide. Another important challenge for us, at least when we are thinking of reimagining and restarting education, there is a felt need for integrating education with skills training. This is something we have been lacking very much. If you take the figures, like less than 3% of our workforce is formally trained, whereas it is 96 in South Korea, 80% in Japan, and for US also it is somewhere above 65%. So we need to find new strategies along with, when we redesign the educational strategies. One major challenge for us is to integrate vocational and life skills into the curriculum, and integrate these things and ensure that the students who are passing through these stages and coming out of the school system are employable somewhere, or they have some skills to survive with. This is, and because in the existing market, as everybody knows, there is a big mismatch between education and employability. So this gap we need to address. Then we need to build innovative collaborations with corporates, businesses to integrate the skill needs of the job market. Because that is, they form the corporates, the businesses, they are the from the demand side. They are the people who are going to employ these people, or they are the people who are going to engage these people. So certainly, we need to consult while we redesign our education system, while we redesign our curriculum. We have to consult these things with the corporates or the end users, and the curriculum has to be so flexible that it has to accommodate the business requirements there. Then we also have to ensure that local bodies and governments play a very proactive role in creating a perfect blend of partnerships in education, because otherwise education delivery will not be that effective. Local bodies can ensure the bridging of this technology divide in villages by providing sometimes like TVs for small groups of people, because you cannot afford to provide to all people. Because India is a country which is more than the less than 25% of our rural households have access to internet. So we are thinking of digitizing the education in a country where 75 only 75% of people don't have access to internet. And how many of our people have TV and all those things? Because we have never made access or ownership of TV a universal program. So we cannot just assume away certain ground level realities and then switch to a digital platform and start delivering things overnight. Next slide, Majid. Next slide. So even done properly, remote learning or online learning is a poor substitute to classroom learning, as we already indicated. Schools provide certain other things from the formal education side, like experience. They provide a kind of experiential learning atmosphere there, and younger children, they have that cognitive skills. Unless and until it is a two-way process between a teacher and the student in a face-to-face process, these cognitive skills and all cannot be identified or developed. Then another thing, classrooms are, as I stated earlier, they are the convergence places for students, and these people, these students are coming from diverse backgrounds as diverse as Indian society, and they have divergent capabilities. Unless and until we reach out to each individual and treat each individual as specific or individual itself, we cannot develop these people and their capability. They have better scope for development of cognitive skills, team building, and leadership skills, network. All these things are generally the students obtain from the school and the classroom environment. So we cannot dispense with that thing, but the format for this, the organization of the school or the conduct of classes will be different from what it used to be earlier. Because the spatial norms are there, so we'll have less number of kids, and you will have staggered schedules for the same class. One batch will come in a particular time and the other batch can come at some other time. That would mean teachers will have to overwork, or they have to have more teachers, and that means you will have to expand the classroom capacities, or you have to modify all these infrastructures, and it would require additional funds. And who is going to provide that thing? This is another big challenge. Then intellectual, emotional, and physical well-being of future generations depend on present education system, because our future is these students coming out of these schools and educational institutions. So what type of future we should have is decided by the present educational system. Are we planning them? Are we planning this system so scientifically and in consultation with all the stakeholders? Because what we need now is that we have a huge challenge before us, switching over to another platform and delivering all these things and producing results. But we have to ensure, as I stated earlier, one is the readiness of this thing. We also have to ensure that the education we provide is equitable, it is accessible to all the people, all those who want education, need education, and it should be inclusive. We shouldn't involuntarily exclude certain categories of people or certain regions from the ambit of education network. This could happen because of the, as we stated earlier, this could happen, or there's lurking danger is the technology divide as it exists in the country now. And then we also have to integrate skill with the education system, starting with the new norm. Now we'll move to the next slide. So when we start reimagining the education, let me conclude these things in a few couple of points like this. One is that technology embedded education system and delivery strategies are the future. So ensure equity, inclusiveness of the new system. This is very much needed. Otherwise, the system will not be sustainable, and it will have other social implications as well. Then need to recast the curriculum to suit the learner and future life needs. Here, I want to stress one more point. We rarely consult the learner, because the learner is never consulted when a curriculum is designed or when a delivery mode is designed, and they need to be consulted, and their expectations and their capabilities are to be mapped scientifically for an efficient and sustainable education system. Then we also have to look for blending school education with adequate life and vocational skills training, as we indicated. Then we need to empower teachers to enable delivery of this curriculum in the new mode. They need to be adequately trained, and we also need to de-stress them. Then we have to ensure the readiness of schools, the teachers, learners, and parents to adapt to a technology-driven education format. Overnight, nothing will happen, but we have a long way to go, but we have some more time. Let us pull together the resources and approach the challenges cool-headed, and let us form an educational model or re-strategize our education uh, in an informed and consultative manner. We need to engage education parents to this new format. So education, as it remains, education has to continue, but schools can remain closed for some more period. But prior to that, we need to resolve certain challenges like this, and sooner the better. We need. It would be better to replan these things so that when the students are ready to go to schools, they will have a different atmosphere, and they should enjoy learning there, because online learning can be a short-term solution. We will have an online plus classroom kind of a blended educational system in the future, because that is going to be the future. So let us wait for the sunshine to happen. Let us wait for the grass to grow green. Meanwhile, the cows are dying. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil, for the detailed statistics of reform. We need to bring a reformation in the education system as well as the skilling, because as you said, that actually skilling has to be done according to the requirement. In India, it's less than 3% of people has been properly skilled, and we let the government see some sort of an option for skilling the people, because 65% of the people in India is employable.
Seagull International Human Resource Consultants. Bridging the gap between dream and reality.